This is pages 182 through 200. So kind of a long reading, but it's 182 through 200, No Man's Land, July 20th, 1918. So now we've gone back in time. This is the story that Miss Sadie is telling Abilene that occurred back in 1918. Jinx rushed headlong into Shady's place. "Hey, Shady, you're not going to believe how many bottles I sold." He fanned a wad of money. Shady looked furtively toward the front door as dusk set in. Now's probably not a good time. Furtively, go ahead and underline that. That's going to be one of our vocabulary words for this section. So he's uneasy. So furtively means like something's up or uneasy. He looked uneasily toward the front door. Jinx continued to not noticing Shady's uneasiness. "Your hooch and Velmatee's elixir are a match made in heaven." So he's referring to the fact that they mixed what was left of Shady's alcohol with Miss Velmatee's good for what ails you elixir, and he's been selling it. "It's been less than 2 weeks and just about everybody in town. Quite a few of those folks are going to be showing up here any minute for Hadley's meeting." "Why here?" "Because Hadley only invited 1 or 2 people from each fraternal order, and he doesn't want Burton knowing about it. After the cross burning in front of the German Hall, folks are a little on edge, but they're coming, and the way Eudora Larkin's been dogging me all week after that episode at the Women's Temperance League meeting, I have a feeling she'll be not far behind them. Your elixir made a lasting impression on her." Remember, her behavior wasn't very ladylike for Eudora Larkin at a Women's Temperance League meeting. Jinx's mouth dropped open. "She bought a bottle from Velmatee, not me. Besides, who told her to drink a whole bottle in one sitting?" He hesitated. "Do you think she knows we did a little tampering with it?" "You've been selling it all over town, so I think she might have a pretty good idea." Jinx grimaced. "Well, there was extra, and I figured I was doing Velmatee a favor to get her elixir out among the ailing public." "I'm sure that was your utmost priority," Shady said with a sideways glance. They heard footsteps crunching on the gravel outside. "Quick," Shady whispered. He hoisted up a movable panel behind the bar that revealed a hidden stash of whiskey bottles. "What's that for?" Jinx asked. Remember when Abilene had first come to Shady's house, and she was feeling across the bar top and said, "Oh, this feels like a movable panel." Well, voila. "It's for hiding things. What's it look like? Get in and stay there." Jinx barely had time to stuff his wad of money into his overalls and crawl inside before the front door opened. The space was dark and cramped. Jinx shifted to find a more comfortable position and noticed a pinhole of light. He strained to reach it and placed his eye against a perfect peephole, through which he could see most of the bar's seating area of small wooden tables and chairs. It was Chester Thornhill who entered. Chester was a regular customer who knew nothing of any meeting. "Evening, Shady. I'll have a shot." A shot of whiskey. Jinx heard Shady behind the bar. "Evening, Chester. Gonna have to be a quick one tonight. I'll bet the missus is waiting for you." "I'm in no hurry," Chester said. Shady's in a hurry because he's about to have a whole bunch of people in his place. And remember, it's prohibition, so it's illegal. "I'm in no hurry," Chester said. The front door opened again and more people arrived. Jinx watched from his hiding place. Chairs shifted and scraped against the dusty floor as people took their seats and eyed each other without speaking. There had never been a town meeting before. Normally, each fraternal order would gather in their own hall and discuss their own business. On occasion, there might be an awkward encounter in the mercantile or the hardware store in which members of one nationality might exchange a halted word or greeting with those of another. Even in church, folks kept to their own. Among the Catholics, the Austrians went to Mass at 8, the Italians went at 9, and the Irish at 10. Services were divided up similarly among the Lutherans and Methodists. But in light of the recent goings-on at the mine, the cross burning at the German Fraternal Hall, and the Widow Kane's death, the whole town was abuzz. With everyone wanting... Oh, my goodness. Evidently, I'm sleepier than I thought. With everyone wanting to talk and a more than usual desire not to be noticed by Burton and his pit boys, representatives of each... With everyone's wanting to talk and a more than usual desire not to be noticed by Burton and his pit boys, representatives of each nationality and a few others had been asked to the secret meeting at Shady's place. Chester Thornhill, one of Burton's crew, had not been invited. So not only is this customer there and crashing the meeting kind of, he works for Burton. But there he was, smack in the middle of it. Wide-eyed, Chester sipped his drink as Velma T. Hardraker arrived. Soon after, Olaf and Greta Ackerson of Norway took their seats. The Ackersons were the driest couple in town, meaning that they did not drink at all. No alcohol at all. When they started munching on a few beer nuts, it was too much for Chester to swallow. "What's going on here, Shady?" Chester blustered, as Casimir and Etta Cybulskis from Poland joined the growing crowd, their 4-year-old daughter Eva in tow. "Why, we're having a discussion on prairie flora and fauna in honor of the late Widow Kane." Shady whipped out 5 glasses and filled them with sarsaparilla, like cherry Coke. "Flora and who?" "Fauna," Shady replied without apology. "Did you know there are 37 varieties of hydrangea in Crawford County alone?" Little Eva stared at Chester as she took her first sip of the bubbly sarsaparilla, then being eye level with Jinx's peeping hole, she peered right at him and giggled. Chester banged his glass down on the table. "This is a bar, Shady, not a ladies' tea room." He tossed a coin onto the table, nearly running into the Hungarian woman as he stormed out. Jinx's hiding spot was getting stuffy and his feet tingled from lack of circulation. But even after being spotted by Eva, he couldn't take his eye away from the drama unfolding before him. The Hungarian woman, her bracelets and beads jangling, took her place alone at the bar. Shady filled a shot glass for her and couldn't help smiling. Never had there been such an array of people in his establishment. Go ahead and underline array. It means assortment. Never had there been such an assortment of people at his establishment. Some were regulars, unbeknownst to their wives, while others would normally sooner be caught dead than set foot across his threshold. But here they all were. Sitting on the floor, Eva played with her set of colorful nesting dolls, removing one hollowed out and brightly painted doll from inside the other, while everyone waited for someone to speak. Jinx breathed a sigh of relief. It looked like Mrs. Larkin wasn't going to make it after all. But then the door burst open and Mrs. Larkin came in, wagging her finger. She hadn't been invited either. "Shady, I've a bone to pick with you. That hooligan you've got staying here." She stopped, realizing that Shady's saloon was full of people who she was fairly certain were not his usual crowd. "What's going on here?" Shady just whistled nervously and wiped out a few more whiskey glasses. "Come on in, Eudora." Hadley pulled up a chair for her at the Cybulskis' table. "We were just having a little town meeting, so I guess this pertains to you too." Mrs. Larkin was apparently too stunned to speak and quietly took her seat. clutching her handbag in her lap. Thank you all for coming, Hadley continued. I think we all know why we're here, except for maybe Mrs. Larkin. My apologies, Eudora. In a nutshell, Arthur Devlin needs the piece of land belonging to the late widow Kane, and for once, there's something he can't get his hands on. That land could be a big bargaining tool for all of us. He has to get to his vein of coal, and if we own the widow Kane's land, he'd have to go through us to get it. There was a silence while all present considered what this meant. But the widow Kane, she is dead, no? Said Callisto Matenopoulos. Who owns the land? Legally, no one, said Hadley. The widow Kane passed away July 1st and left no heirs. Therefore, her estate is considered in probate or in holding. Those assembled stared at him, not sure what he was telling them. Effectively, the land and the vein of coal that runs beneath it belongs to no one at this time. For all practical purposes, it's no man's land. The words were spoken in a deep voice filled with salt water and brogue. Jinx knew who had spoken without even looking. Donald McGregor stood just inside the doorway, arms folded across his broad chest, waiting for the image conjured by his words to sink in. Everyone was painfully aware of the term used to describe the open ground between opposing trenches in the fields of France, Belgium, and Germany, and of the deadly struggle for that land. Aptly put, Donald, Hadley continued. The property can be purchased by the township of Manifest along with payment of back taxes within 90 days. If the township does not have the necessary funds or simply does not want the land, as of October 1st, it will revert to the county and then be open for public auction. Donald moved to the bar and poured himself a drink. And the mine will outbid us all, and the property will be theirs. They'll have what they need to keep us under their thumb. Aye, it will be a right bloody battle to keep that land away from Devlin. He swallowed the whiskey in one gulp. Even without Mr. Underhill present, everyone can practically hear the final nail being hammered into a coffin. So they're trying to say that they're never going to have the funds to buy the land. What is for us to do? Asked Nikolai Yezerski. The mine, it owns us. It says you must work more hours in a day for same pay. They say here is voucher to buy what costs double at the company store. So it is Sunday, first you work, then you can go to church. Look at the Germans. They have a few meetings and the men in the hooded robes burn a cross to warn them. Everyone nodded. How much would it cost to buy the land, Hadley asked Herman Kufer, who had been a man of some means in his homeland of Germany until he had spoken out against the Kaiser. He stroked his handlebar mustache, waiting for an answer. To buy the land and pay the back taxes, it will cost $1,000. Callisto Matenopoulos, oops, one. Okay, sorry, I had to take a little pause there to turn on some lights because I couldn't see the book. Callistos Matenopoulos expressed the shock of everyone present. None of us have money. All we have are to sell our store vouchers and perhaps a few silver spoons and thimbles brought over from our homelands. What about the skills that we bring? Asked Casimir Cybulski. I was a tailor in Poland. I can make suits. Surely there are others who can make goods or provide services for money. And who would pay for these? Asked Nikolai. Yes, I make shoes, but who here will buy my shoes? As you say, we have no money. Besides, argued Olaf Ackerson, Burton and his pit boys, they will know what we do, and they will take action against us. Remember Sean McQuaid? He lost his job at the mine for merely suggesting that the men should not work on Sundays. We have children to feed. Etta Cybulski's rested a hand on her swollen belly, carrying her sixth child. They are right, Callisto said. We cannot risk opposing the mine. There will be consequences. There was a fearful rumble of assenting, and the room grew quiet. There seemed to be no more to say. Little Eva continued playing with her nesting dolls, opening a larger doll to take out a smaller one and holding it in front of the peephole for Jinx to see. Fortunately, no one took notice of her. Jinx carefully reached down to rub his left foot, hoping the meeting would end soon. The Hungarian woman plunked her shot glass down onto the bar top and wiped her mouth with the back of her hand. Do you forget where you come from? She stared them down. What about the others who depend on us? Those who are left behind. Her breathing was heavy. Casimir Cybulskis. She raised her chin and said, when your village was attacked, did your grandmother not hide you in a barn? Did she not give you her life savings to send you to America? Callisto Matenopoulos, your mother, did she not work 3 jobs to provide you with the chance to make the same voyage? And Nikolai Yezerski, what about your family? They had to make a choice. Which son will go to America and which son will be forced to join the army? Your older brother, he insists you go and he will stay, no? There was a stunned silence. They hadn't realized she knew so much about them. They sacrificed to send us here, she continued. And for what? To live a dream of freedom and prosperity? They would be ashamed of us. What is it to defy the devil in mind to those who've risked everything? Her words lingered. Those in the room who'd remained unnamed looked into their own past, their own stories of coming to America. Until a moment before, these people in Shady's bar had thought they knew little of each other as they hunkered with their own kind in their own trenches. But with the Hungarian woman's words, they suddenly realized something in each other. They shared the same blood, immigrant blood. There was a long silence, finally broken by Donald McGregor. She's right. They've pushed us around long enough. It's time to do something about it. Hadley observed the nods of agreement. Okay, the question is what? Donald rubbed his weathered chin. They've got us over a barrel and they know it. And what do the Scots do when they're over a barrel? Asked Mr. Matenopoulos. Donald's face broke into a wide grin. Before or after we drink what's in it? There was relief in the laughter. Even Olaf and Greta Ackerson gave a chuckle. Well, even if we wanted to, Hadley said, I don't think we're going to be able to drink our way out of this one. We need money and lots of it. Unfortunately, the only ones making any money are the mine owners and the bootleggers. No offense, Shady. None taken. Jinx's entire body was becoming one contorted knot. Underline contorted. That's another vocab word for this chapter. And it means twisted. He stretched his leg ever so slightly and accidentally knocked over one of the whiskey bottles with a crash. Everyone sat rigid and tension filled the room. What was that? Mr. Matenopoulos asked. Shady grabbed an empty glass. Anyone want another round? Another cup of tea? Hadley Gillen stepped behind the bar, and after a quick examination, he removed the panel and hoisted Jinx from his hiding place, dislodging the wad of bills at the same time and sending them fluttering all over the bar top. You, Mrs. Larkin cried out. Velma, is this the hooligan who had access to your so-called elixir? More like the devil's brew, if you ask me. Is that the kind of thing you concoct in your chemistry class? Calm down, Eudora, Velma T. urged. I'll admit there was a bit more kick in it than usual, but even you said it helped your fever and chills. Help me look a fool the way those Temperance League ladies carry on. I'll never hear the end of it. Jinx gathered up his money and inched his way toward the door, mistakenly thinking he could slip out while the two women argued. Call the sheriff and arrest that boy, Mrs. Larkin ordered. Donald McGregor stuck out his foot to block Jinx's escape. Not so fast, lad. He's been a source of conniving and cajolery in this community long enough, Mrs. Larkin continued. Just look at his loot. Who knows how many other innocent people he's hoodwinked into buying that snake oil. I insist that he be put under arrest. Okay, underline cajolery as another vocab word. We'll come back to that one. Now hold on, Eudora, said Hadley. He looked at Jinx. who had his money in hand. You better have a seat, son, till we get this sorted out. And why don't you hand over that money to Shady for the time being? Jinx placed the money on the bar and took a seat behind the counter next to Shady, his one sure ally in the room. We have bigger problems at hand, Casimir Cybulski said, resuming the discussion. How to raise $1,000 without being noticed by Burton. It is impossible. The room erupted in a din of agreement. Then Shady had an idea. From the looks of things, the mine owners and the bootleggers aren't the only ones making money after all. He fanned the stack of bills in front of him. What are you saying, Shady? Asked Hadley. I'm saying that this young man may have an idea that we would do well to listen to. You're not suggesting we take advice from a con artist? Mrs. Larkin asked in horror. All I'm saying is drastic times call for drastic measures. All eyes looked to Jinx, and Jinx looked to Shady with a horror to match Mrs. Larkin's face. Hadley Gillen, Mrs. Larkin protested. The hardware store owner jumped, wondering how he'd been put in a position of judge and jury. Well, now, he scratched his head, straining for a solution to this predicament. Then Velma T came to his rescue. It's true that Jinx tampered with the elixir that caused Mrs. Larkin to be a little more, well, animated than usual, so it does appear that some restitution is in order. Might I suggest that he do some manual labor for Mrs. Larkin? He can be quite industrious under the proper supervision. This is a lot of reading. So my coconut water is coming in handy. That sounds like a fine idea. What do you say, Eudora? Will a little restitution do the trick? Well, Your Honor, I hardly think. Settled. Hadley tapped his glass on the table like a gavel. Now, if we could get back to the subject at hand. All eyes returned to Jinx. Shady, I don't think these folks want to hear from me, Jinx whispered. Well, I'm sure Sheriff Dean would be more than eager to ask you a few questions, Shady whispered back. These folks are desperate. There's no telling what they might do. Hadley Gillen looked at the worn faces, all looking at Jinx. So what is Shady implying? He's implying that the townspeople are desperate and they might turn Jinx into the sheriff for a reward to get money. So it's probably better that even though he doesn't think the people want to hear from him, it's probably better that he go ahead and give his opinion and try to help him out. Young man, this town is at a bit of an impasse. If you have any suggestion that might help, now would be the time to voice it. Jinx squirmed to his very core. He looked pleadingly at Shady to be relieved of this fix. Little Eva, who continued to carefully take apart each doll to remove a smaller one from inside, finally removed the tiniest doll and tottered over to Jinx. Matrishka, she said, naming the nesting doll. She handed the smiling doll to him, as if this tiny memento embodied the hope and fears of everyone in the room. Jinx accepted the gift and the burden. He cleared his throat. So, he began haltingly, you want to keep Devlin and Burton out of town for a month and make $1,000. That's right, Hadley answered for the group. Would that include keeping Sheriff Dean out of town? Hadley paused, studying Jinx. He seemed to sense the bargaining that was taking place. I suppose it would. Well, then I have an idea, said Jinx. There was a solidarity among the people in Shady's bar that night. Solidarity, a oneness, a togetherness. As one by one they emerged from their trenches and ventured in to no man's land. Okay, the Manifest Herald has put a notice in the newspaper on page 195, Spanish influenza, no occasion for panic, by Dr. Alfred Gregory of the Mine Medical Staff. Now, this gentleman works for the mine. He's part of the mine medical staff. So ask yourself before we read this if you think maybe he might have an interest in the men continuing to work since he works for the mine. The Spanish influenza is nothing more than the old grip or la grippe, which circulates from time to time. Symptoms include chills, aching, fever, and sometimes nausea and dizziness. The germs attack the lining of the air passages, nose, throat, and bronchial tubes, which result in a deep cough and sore throat. At the first symptoms, go to bed, stay quiet, and don't worry. Take a laxative, such as prunes, and eat nourishing food. Having a really, really hard time figuring out how prunes are going to help my sore throat, but okay. One may also apply menthol and camphor, like Vicks Vapor Rub type stuff, to the chest, back, and neck. However, prevention is the best medicine. Evidence seems to prove that this is a germ disease spread principally by human contact, chiefly through coughing, sneezing, or spitting, so avoid persons who are likely to do those things. How do you know who's going to cough? And remember, hard work and healthy living will keep one free of sickness. So right in the very first line, the Spanish influenza is nothing more than the old grip which circulates from time to time. Okay, we'll be talking more about the Spanish flu next week, but it definitely was a little more than the routine flu. That would be like saying the pandemic we're having now is just like any old cold. And we know, I mean, obviously that's not the case. So we've had to make alterations to our daily life. Okay, but his last sentence seems to suggest, if you try to live healthy and you work hard, you keep going to work for the mine, then you'll be free of sickness. Healing Spring Waters, Hot Springs, Arkansas. Come to the healing springs of Hot Springs, Arkansas. Who needs Colorado Springs when you can find healing and comfort in the moderate climate of Hot Springs, Arkansas? Take a walk on the promenade of Bathhouse Row and choose from one of our many bathhouses. You can bathe in our natural thermal mineral springs, which are known for their therapeutic value in the relief of common ailments, such as arthritis, bursitis, rheumatism, and gout. Come visit the springs of Hot Springs, Arkansas. Hattie Mae's News Auxiliary, July 21st, 1918. I regret that there will be no Hattie Mae's News Auxiliary this week due to my feeling puny these last couple of days. I will keep my chin up and hopefully resume writing all the who's, what's, whys, whens, and wheres by next week. Hattie Mae Harper, Reporter About Town. And the last part we're going to read tonight, Private Ned Gillen in an Open Field, June 28th, 1918. Dear Jinx, how's the spy hunt going? Uncovered any subterfuge? If President Wilson comes to visit again, which he probably won't, tell him Ned Gillen says hey, and us boys overseas could use some warm blankets and better food. We're all tired and hungry right now. After a long ride in boxcars with soldiers jammed shoulder to shoulder, we had an even longer march in the pouring rain. We were heading one direction, watching lines of old-timers trudging the other way. Sad-looking lot with their scraggly beards and muddy uniforms. They seemed like they'd been through it. We'd see 60, 70 soldiers in a row. Frenchmen in the horizon, blue uniforms, all with eyes bandaged, walking with their hands touching to the shoulders of the guy in front for direction. Poor chumps. Got gassed and couldn't even see the Yanks coming to end this war. We're finally settled in for the night, if that's what you call being wedged into the muddy wall of a 6-foot trench. I'm so hungry right now, all I can think of is taking out the belly wrinkles, as the fellas say. We're eating in shifts because there aren't enough chow kits for everyone. We're so short on everything, I'm lucky to have a gun. Beans and bread tonight. I wish I could say Pop's cooking is better, but we both know that'd be a lie. Don't tell him I said that. We're using Army forks. That means our fingers, if you're wondering why there are food smears on this letter. So much for fancy perfume paper. I sure am missing Mama Santoni's home-cooked lasagna. Tell her to keep a pot of sauce simmering for when I get home. From the sound of things, we're a ways off from the zone of advance. It sounds like a thunderstorm in the distance with the rumble of cannons and everything. So often the sky lights up like lightning. If I close my eyes, I can almost picture being in Manifest under a stormy June sky. Almost. Sarge says we're moving out first thing tomorrow morning. 0 hour, he called it. Guess this is what we came here for, so we might as well get it over with. Now I know why they kept Heck Holler and me together. We were the fastest guys at camp, along with a chap named Eddie Lawson. Sarge asked us to be runners, guys who sprint back and forth from regiment to base camp, getting orders and supplies. He said it was voluntary, but we weren't about to turn it down. Eddie won the toss, so he's out on his first run right now. He's fast as the dickens. Plus, he's an ace of a guy. Can't wait to hear if he saw any action. From the trenches next to Holler's Werlich-Futten, Ned, hero abroad. June 29th, 1918. Eddie was killed last night, shot just a mile from here. A mile. He could run that in little over 4 minutes. So 4 minutes later, and he would have been safe. So what does that say about the job that they have volunteered for? It's probably not the safest one. So on that sad tone, we will end here, and I will be posting some questions on the portal. This reading is due by Friday, just reading it. And then your questions will need to be turned in by Monday. So for this week, you have 3 readings for the week. And then the questions are due by Monday. So I'll put all of that on the portal. Friday, of course, will be an AR day. So hopefully you're making some progress in your AR book. All right. Have a great day, and I'll see you soon.